an opportunity to enjoy the sun today. Welcome to this week's showcase. My name is Ali Rosen, aka Ali Billings-Caisley. And whilst I lived in California, I founded Therapeutic Healing and Wellness. That was back in 2005, which has now morphed into Thought Sports and Remedial Therapy and Wellness in the Workplace. My business temporarily closed its doors on the 13th of March this year. And with more time on my hands, I made the decision to use my time as effectively as I could during COVID-19 pandemic. So I decided to create these business showcases, which are completely free, giving others in my industry and bigger industries beyond the opportunity to stay in people's lives and be as visible as possible, having lost the opportunity to actually see clients and patients on a one-to-one situation. Everything has now moved online and has become really restrictive. Whilst a lot of our doors have opened, we are still getting back into the motion of seeing patients and clients on a one-to-one system. So today, it gives me great pleasure to welcome Kari Roberts. Kari is an emotional strength coach, and she works with individual clients, local authorities, charities, and corporates. Welcome, Kari. How are you?
I'm very well. Very excited to be here. Thank you for having me today.
You're very welcome. It's fabulous to see you here today. So, can you give us a little bit of background, a little bit about yourself and your journey and what led you to where you are today as an emotional strength coach?
Well, it's quite a story. I'll start it from 6 years ago. I mean, it can go back much further, but I'll start it 6 years ago. I was working for a local authority, and throughout my career, I'd worked in education and health promotion, worked in youth development, and then into parenting. I sort of It was like a river that was just taking me to all these amazing opportunities. And working with young people, what I found was that there was, in a way, a gap between working with them and supporting them in substance misuse and alcohol.
Gosh. Wow.
And then the home. So it seemed very disjointed. The services worked very disjointed. They worked in isolation.
So was there no follow through? So they still went back to their tumultuous home lives. They were exposed to all these product and whatever was happening, the social and emotional situations that they were confronted with.
Yes.
Oh, wow.
And it was, for me, what was my turning point was I'd worked with a young girl who had been deemed uneducational. Wow. And had a significant cannabis use. And we'd worked really well together. And there was a lot of emotional, and what I found in each part of my journey, emotions and feelings have always been at the forefront.
Absolutely.
Of anything that we've delivered.
Absolutely.
And I've always had this inner passion about the holistic approach, the whole approach. And services got better, but they were still working sort of, youth would say we only work with youth. We don't work with the parents. We don't work with agencies. And that started to change. And then local authorities would only work with, the children. And the parents would be given things they had to do, go away and do and access.
So a lot of the time, I mean, the parents were not even present probably emotionally as far as the children were concerned, or probably didn't even do what they were asked to do in the first place. I mean,
yeah, when we talk about complex issues, sort of when you really talk about complexities, yes. But I think for a lot of parents, it was they didn't know how.
Right, exactly, yeah.
And with parenting, there's always been, the evidence-based parenting stuff that's offered. but very few of those will look at the emotional impact of becoming a parent.
I'm afraid that's, yeah. Yep.
Yeah. And the one parenting program that I really sort of fell in love with, and I actually became a facilitator of facilitators for Oxford Brookes, was Strengthening Families 10 to 14 UK, because it worked with the parent and with the child. They came together. So the parent would have their sort of hour session, and the young people would go in and, you know, sort of do a lot of fun activities and lots of activities like seeing it from their parents' point of view.
Yes.
And then the parents would be like seeing it from their young person's point of view. And then they came together and had a meal, which out of all the things we offered, that meal time was magical.
Oh,
And then we had family time where they would do activities together. They would look at their strengths. They would look at, you know, their values and all those wonderful things that get lost when things get difficult.
do you, sorry to butt in,
Sorry.
do you think a lot of this is really historical? You know, what I find as a coach is that a lot of my clients who've got all these really tough emotional issues, they carry an imprint not only from their parents but their grandparents and their great grandparents, and so it's just almost a lot of the time it's just a cycle repeating itself because they're in that imprint of, you know, how it's been done for XYZ number of generations, and they don't know any other way, do they? A lot of the time.
No. And I think that's the thing. I mean, Maya Angelou said that, you know, we just do what we do. We don't know any different until we do know different, and then we do better. I have a slight thing about, you know, doing better, because I think everyone does what they can.
Exactly, yeah.
And the whole point of then going into the parenting was I wanted to sort of see, like, what was there for parents? What was the support that was there for parents? And the young girl that I was talking about, we worked so well together, but there was a holiday and she went back home. And when she came back, we were right back at the start and had to start again. And it was all down to the home environment. And so, you know, it was like, okay, so what is there? Because obviously I'm doing this work with this beautiful young woman. What support is there for the parents? So I started to explore that. And then the opportunity during the last government was to work with parents. There was a lot of, I think there was a lot of misinformation and myths around the parenting support, because it was originally brought in for families that were associated with, you know, non-attendance, mental health, antisocial behavior. And yet we know that when my children were born, there was no booklet to say, you might feel this, you may
No.
feel, you know, there will be this emotional surge. So we had all the evidence-based stuff, but looking at it, I kept thinking a lot of the issues stem from parents believing they should parent in a certain way,
Absolutely.
but not having the confidence to say, do you know what, that doesn't work for me and my child. I've explored what my triggers are. I know what my emotional styles are. I know how to decode my emotions. So because we don't talk about that. We don't talk about that
But
sort of
do you think a lot, I mean, personally, I think that kind of is changing, and particularly with Prince William and the other one,
Harry.
Prince Harry. I love them both dearly. They have really brought out the fact that it's okay to talk. It's very important to talk. You know, it doesn't make you any different. You know, a lot of the mental health issues, people in the past, as you say, nobody talked about it, and so I guess a lot of their behaviors stemmed from them having to just keep all this stuff inside them, didn't it?
Yeah, and I think there's I'm a great fan of Brené Brown, and I love her.
Likewise, likewise.
Yeah, and I love her delving into shame. And actually, when we look,
Powerful.
very powerful,
Yes.
and when we look back, and I look back on, you know, what was being offered, a lot of the time there was a shame element to it.
Yes.
And as we know, shame does not make for long-term sustainable healthy changes. You
No.
know, it doesn't. And a lot of parents were coming with that, believing that they were bad parents, rather
Oh,
than there being, you know, that actually they'd never come across this situation before, so they didn't know how to, you know, and they were reverting back to maybe how they were parented, or they were and there's two scales of parenting. You either parent as your parents parented you, which is a lot of words there, because that feels comfortable, and you
well,
think, well,
this is
actually,
it.
yeah, I'm okay. And
People like to stay in their comfort zone because they fear the unknown.
yeah,
They're scared to take a foot outside of this box, this safety blanket that they've lived in, which they know has worked for their parents and or their grandparents, because that is the way.
yeah.
Yeah.
And I think the other end of the sort of, if you like, the other end of the pendulum is people then reject their parents' parenting because actually they remember how painful it was for them because they didn't fit into that.
Yeah.
I've got 3 children, and each one of my children are very different. You know, I know that with one of my eldest, I can sit down and have a conversation and go, look, with my middle son, it's very much, if I confront, he withdraws. So we have conversations. We you know, I'll do it in a much more less confrontational way, if you like.
Right. Yeah.
Although it's, you know, and my daughter, it's a bit of both. So actually I had to learn that, because what worked for my eldest son didn't work for my middle
No,
son. And I was like,
I can relate to
oh,
that. I can really
yeah.
relate to that as well. Yeah.
Yeah. And it's and I look back sometimes and think, oh my goodness, you know, I was just trying to find my way. And you're right. I totally rejected how I was parented, because my mum has sort of like mental health issues.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Um, and I love her dearly,
Of
but
course.
actually I thought, I don't want, I wanted to break some of the
That
cycle.
mold. Yes.
Yeah. And so I had that in the back of my mind, but with that came the fear of, oh, well, I can't go there because actually I might be stepping into that arena of, you know, just being sort of too authoritative and going, do as I do,
Oh.
not as I do. And that works well at times, but as we know, our children they develop, and they
They
become curious,
do. They
and they want to
do.
know. And, you know, and if we keep saying to them, no, just do as you're told, one or two things happen. They just go inwards, or they then
Absolutely.
comes outward. And I've worked in schools, and I, you know, have the utmost respect for teachers, but I've seen children shamed, and I've seen that complete withdrawal or the blowing up of behavior. And I
Well,
was an emotional literacy support assistant, so I saw the blowing up of behavior more, because that's
yeah.
when they came,
I
or I was called, you
Yeah,
know.
I mean, I think that's the only way that they know how to express themselves.
Yeah.
And particularly depending on the age of the child, you know, if they're quite a young child, that's all they can do to
Mhm.
kind of tell you that they're struggling, or it's not okay, or they can't do this, or they're uncomfortable with something else, you know. And as you say, the older they get, you know, they have their own independent ideas and their own independent thoughts. So
Absolutely.
yeah, that's
And,
amazing.
you
Gosh.
know, and children under the age of 5, they are, in the majority, unable to regulate emotions. So if you're saying to a child to, you know, regulate themselves, the struggle is, well, don't quite know how to do this,
No,
and, you know, and they're not quite sure. And that's the thing. If we don't talk about our emotions, yet our
no.
emotions are the first thing that happens to our body. It's the first thing that happens. We feel something before, if you like, our sort of thinking part of the brain,
Our
prefrontal cortex.
conscious and our subconscious our emotions just kick in from the moment we're born.
Yeah.
And
So
that's what we take in. We take in our surroundings, and that's how our mapping
yeah.
starts. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think the thing is we are conditioned, and depending on our culture, depending on our family, we are conditioned that, oh, you're too loud.
Yep.
So you're too emotional, or so you start to then think this is a negative thing. Feeling angry is a negative. Feeling happy is a
Can all,
positive.
but also sometimes if children express their happiness, sometimes a parent or an authoritative figure could see that as being inappropriate, and so that can be stymied as well, which
Yeah.
again creates other psychological problems, in their development as they grow up. Yeah, it's a
And I
very
think,
powerful subject.
I mean, I remember we had come, I was born and brought up in Malaysia, and we came back to the UK, and my stepdad had stayed in Malaysia, and then we came back. And I can remember I was about six and a half, running through the airport because I saw him and I was so excited and I wanted to give him a cuddle. And a couple of adults just before I got to my dad walked in front of me, and I was told off for running and not waiting. And the message that stayed with me for a long time was, oh, I need to hold back showing that level of emotion.
And that was,
And
you were just so naturally
yeah,
overjoyed. So
yeah,
you were being told to suppress.
yeah.
Oh, wow.
So there's lots of those things. And I think for me, sort of working with the parents, and we created in Southampton, we were really fortunate. We had a great relationship with the health authorities, and we created an
Good.
amazing program called Emotional First Aid for Parents. Not a parenting course, but just looking at all those emotions and triggers, etc. And that was part of the job I really loved. But then 6 years ago, there was a huge transformation, and I found I was sat at a computer assessing things that were coming in,
Oh,
who would work with them. And everything that I loved was starting to change. And slowly by slowly, the mask of turning up to work every day with the mask on and walking through the door and doing my job, but not feeling safe, it didn't fit with my values. And at every point I was being told, no, we know your concerns, but actually this is what we have to do. This is
oh,
what we're doing. So there was an element of, I found myself in this cycle of anxiety and stress,
I'm not
and
surprised. Yeah.
completely losing who I was, even though I'd written programs on it, even though I was supporting people, even though I was still supporting my team. And one day I walked out of work in tears, and I drove to see a friend who is a great mentor of mine. She used to be the head teacher in the school that I worked in. And I got there, I got through, I sort of composed myself, walked through the door, and she asked me how I was, and I completely told her. I just broke down, and she
Oh.
just looked at me and she said, you have to leave. You have to, this is not healthy. Oh, sorry, the dog's decided to
Have a little bark? That's
yeah,
okay.
there's no one there. So it was really interesting because I knew what she was saying. And then the fear kicks in. Lottie, the fear kicked in. I was the main breadwinner. We had responsibilities. How could I
Security
just
of a job and
Oh, yeah.
yeah.
So there was all that fear that kicked in. So I thought, I'm going to discuss this with my husband because actually it will impact. And he just looked at me and he went, I've watched you these last 6 months. You have to leave. And I
Oh,
thought, I was blinded to all that.
through your own
And
anxiety, and
yeah.
it was
And I just
eating you
thought,
alive.
yeah, if it's such an organic thing to do, is to sort of go into that, I'm not going to feel that because actually that's too much. I can't feel that because the fear was too much.
Oh.
So I handed in my notice.
How did you feel when you did that?
My granddaughter has created a word called nervous-sighted, and that was me. I was nervous and excited. It was, and I asked to speak to my manager, and I said, "Look, this is not working for me." And, I had to give, at that time, 4 months notice. So this is not working for me. And I've decided it's time for me to leave. And my manager was amazing, and he said, "I don't want to take your resignation. Let me talk to the members. Let me." And I said to him, I found that strength to say to him, "Look, whatever happens from now, I have to give you this. I have to give you this letter of resignation, because that's what I know is the right thing for me to do." And the
Well
minute
done.
and those people that know me would be sort of like, "Gosh, that was very assertive of you."
Good.
And and there was lots of conversations, but I knew nothing was going to change. That trying to change things from the inside was not going to happen.
No.
And it was completely like somebody had taken a 10-ton coat off of me.
Oh.
And it was very sort of, nerve-wracking, but I knew it was the right decision. And people would say, "You're brave." And at the time I didn't think I was. And that's something that I've really pushed back. But no, I wasn't brave. I just did what was right for me. But now I realize actually I was, because the braver I become, the luckier I become. And I don't think luck has anything. It's just the braver, and the more you fall in love with yourself,
And the
and
more you
stop.
believe in yourself, and the more
Yes.
passionate you are, it's kind of opening up so many new channels and opportunities, because you've embraced that, haven't you?
Yeah.
Oh, there's such a beautiful, beautiful story. So
Yeah.
can you tell me, so how soon after that did you get your independence and get back on the road and create all these programs?
So as soon as I'd given him my notice, and there were some contractual clauses that
Yes, of
I had to
course.
be very careful of. So, but I did set up as a parenting specialist, and I just let people know I was leaving, but I would be setting up as an independent parenting specialist. So people knew, and I had some amazing contacts, because like our networking, there was brilliant contacts, and some amazing workers, and the whole part of working together inclusively was building those contacts.
Right.
So when I left, I was actually contacted to work with other of sort of organizations, and strangely enough, the local authority contacted me to offer some of their programs, which was interesting.
As a consultant to them. So you were independent, but you were then doing it on a consultancy basis, which is a lot. You keep your control and you set your boundaries, don't you?
Yeah.
Amazing.
And it was really interesting, because quite often when you're doing work for local authorities, the biggest piece of advice I would say is really have your boundaries.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Because it really helps, and it helps the relationship as well. And it helps with any frustrations. And so that was for the first 3 months, that was ticking over really, really nicely. And I'm really fortunate. My son has worked independently as a coach for many, many years, and
Oh,
he
wow.
is an entrepreneur, and he would constantly say, "I just don't understand why you don't work for yourself." And I was like, well, no, that's, so he was incredibly helpful. And I did that for sort of 3 years. And during that time, I had another charity ask me if I'd work for them for a short period of time, and I stayed for 2 years.
Wow, amazing. Well done.
But what I found was I was starting to get to the place that I had been previously, because the expectation was that my offer would change, and I was starting to have to do a lot of the stuff that I know are not my strengths. I'm not database.
So you were almost going back into that.
Yeah.
Okay. So So today you are completely independent, working
Yeah,
as an emotional strength coach. And
yeah.
so what kinds of conditions, treatments, services do you offer at the moment?
At the moment, I do sort of like individual coaching sessions, and predominantly where actually, from the outside, everything looks like life's going quite well. Um, and I work with women women in business who are spinning all those plates.
Yeah.
And and you have that voice within you, the guilt voice of, I'm not spending enough time with my family. I'm not spending enough time in my business. Can I do this? Am I enough? And you're swinging from, yes, of course I can do everything, to, oh, I can't do anything. And you've tried everything. You've tried everything. And you believe that actually you have to make this enormous change. You have to become someone else. And my emotional strength coaching is around actually going back to who you truly are, that perfectly imperfect person
Finding
with
yourself.
absolutely without the
Yeah.
conditioning,
Yeah.
and to stop abandoning. This is a great line that Glennon Doyle rather had in her book. Stop abandoning yourself for the sake of false peace. And I think as women, we tend,
Powerful.
very powerful. And I think as women, we tend to do that,
We do.
you know,
Yes.
and this isn't about totally changing who you are. It's
No.
about falling back in love with who you truly are. So if you're someone who is, unorganized and quite loud, and you're trying to be somebody that's really quiet and very organized, there's going to be that conflict
Of
there.
course.
So it's about, sometimes, yes, sometimes we quieten ourselves, but if you're suppressing who you really are, it's going to come out.
Some
And
other way. Yeah.
yeah, and we know with emotional styles, there's we avoid and distract, we might blame, we might feel things, we might be really sort of empathic and feel things to
Yeah.
avoid feeling alone. We might
Yeah.
overanalyze, because the one thing you can't do, strangely enough, you can name an emotion, but if you intellectualize how you're feeling, you're not feeling it.
No, because
Yeah.
it's too clinical, and it's almost like you're reading a scientific document, where it's been recorded, and all about the studies that have been done,
Yeah.
and the analyses, and that's
Yeah.
just kind of unrealistic.
Absolutely. It's good to have that. But
Mm,
actually, if you continually are asking people to tell me how you feel, like write down what is recognize what's happening in your body,
yeah,
recognize the surge, feel it. But people get scared. They don't want to feel those emotions
I
for all.
know. This is so true. You've hit the nail on the head. Gosh,
And if we don't, we then could have another style, which is called somatizing, which means that internally we start to physically hurt ourselves.
that's quite common as well.
Yeah.
It does come out quite a lot. I've experienced that with some of my coaching clients too.
Yeah.
And one has to be so careful with supporting those kinds of clients.
Mm.
So, Kari, gosh, that's a lot of information, and you've certainly had the most incredible journey to date. So, what
Thank you.
inspires you?
What inspires me? Living life as you were meant to
Woohoo!
live.
Yes. What a
You know,
fabulous
and
answer.
yeah, and and I absolutely am open and honest. I don't live my life totally as, I sometimes think, oh, I'd like, but actually it's just knowing that I can, and
Being
it's,
your authentic self.
yeah, be my
Yeah,
authentic self,
yeah.
that how I feel and how I react is my responsibility.
Well
I
said.
can, I can feel annoyed, and I can get really upset. I can feel shame when, I think, oh my goodness, especially with what's going on in the world at the moment. I'm like, oh, but it's not being shamed. It's not being shame. It's feeling it. and then working
Yeah.
out, oh, okay, so, I want to know more. I'm not out to be right. I'm not to
No.
prove myself right, but it's actually, okay, so how do I learn more? How, and where do I feel things? And I know that I feel things in my chest, and I get quite hot, and it's knowing that and going, okay, so what's going on? And
Yeah.
it takes time to do that, because when you talk about decoding your emotions, when you talk about emotional styles, if you've never practiced that, initially it can seem like you're taking a bit of time, but once you start to, you can do it very, very quickly.
Yes.
you know
Thank you so much for sharing that. So just before we finish today, just a couple more questions. So there are a lot of people doing emotional strength coaching, a lot of emotional work. What makes you different in about five words?
I've
Why
been there.
should they? Oh, 3 words. Fantastic. You've been there. Well, what better.
Oh, sorry about that. She does it. I've put everything in place, so she was very calm, and it's not happened. Sorry.
No, that's okay. What better way to express yourself is obviously you're so clearly so passionate about what you do, and as many of us all in the industries that we are in, we've all had our walk and our journey, and all that really does is really inspires us, as obviously you too, to have the knowledge and experience and be empathic to those people who are going through that journey. Thank you so
Yeah.
much. Couple more questions. We're just a bit over time, but I'm sure everyone is fine with that. Um, what? How has COVID impacted you?
Initially, I was starting to I work online, and I was starting to then open up to do workshops, in-person workshops again, just as COVID, the lockdown hit. So I sort of could continue working online, and in fact, I've had an American company contact me to offer their directors and upper management emotional strength support.
Wow,
Because
congratulations.
Thank you. Because they recognize the actual impact that it was having on working, in isolation. So I've been very, very fortunate to be able to continue offering what I offer. And I'm very, very thankful for social media and technology.
Oh, yes, for sure. What would we have done without it?
I
Oh,
know.
my word.
And,
So,
and Frazzled Cafe, with Ruby Wax. Check that out, because that is an amazing, amazing support available. And we've done for the first time an online parenting course for Southampton Family Trust,
oh,
which,
congratulations.
what COVID, the lockdown, has in a way made us look at pivoting, and the parenting support has always been done face to face mainly, and we're just doing our pilot, and it's working amazingly well. So
Oh, I'm so happy, and the very, very best of luck with
thank
that new program. Well, it's been a fantastic time today. Thank you so much for finding the time
you.
to talk to us and the audience today. If you'd like to contact Kari, you can find her on Facebook. The details are on the ticker tape below. And it is at Kari Ann 2309. So it's KARIANN 2309. Find her on Facebook. Her email address is Kariann Roberts 2309. That's KARIANN ROBERTS 2309, all one word, at gmail.com. And her mobile number is 074 345 05781. Kari, it's been such an eye-opener and such a pleasure. Thank you so much for sharing your extraordinary story and your experience, and your emotional strength coaching. Thank you
Thank you.
so
My
much.
pleasure.
You're very welcome. And to everyone in the audience, anyone who would like to be on my free showcase, I'm opening it up to not only people in the health and wellness industry and related, to anyone who wants to join me. It's completely free. And I'm now taking bookings for November and December 2020. Thank you. Take care and stay safe. And see you next Thursday right here at 3 p.m.